My name is Avery Carter. I built a hotel empire floor by floor, while my family deleted my name from the guest list. They thought I'd be too humiliated to notice, too quiet to challenge them, too far gone to still hold the keys. But fate has a sense of humor. The invitation they meant to hide landed right in my inbox. They booked their reunion at my hotel. They walked into my lobby, smiled under my chandeliers, and toasted legacy. On carpet I designed. I didn't raise my voice. I raised the rate. I didn't cancel. I staged. Because when they erased me from their table, I built my own. 30 floors higher. If you've ever been sidelined by your own blood, if you've ever kept receipts when no one else was watching, if you've ever dreamed of the moment they'd have to sit inside your success, then this story is for you. Leave a comment if you've ever been underestimated. Subscribe if you're ready to reclaim your space. One room, one name, one legacy at a time. Because tonight they're guests, but I'm the architect. The subject line was innocent enough. Collins family reunion, confirmation and details. But the sender? A hotel group I owned, branded with the crimson and gold logo I'd chosen myself 3 years ago. Monarch Grand. The venue they'd booked was mine. I didn't flinch. Not right away. I sat back in my chair, fingers steepled, eyes fixed on the 4K screen glowing across my glass-top desk. Manhattan loomed behind me, its glass spires basking in late morning light. Beneath the hum of the air conditioner, I could hear my own pulse ticking like a detonator. 10 years ago, at Brielle's wedding, they sat me with the waitstaff. Just a mix-up, they said, as if I didn't notice my name wasn't on the printed seating chart. As if I hadn't paid for the dress code, the champagne, the linens, from my college savings. But I smiled. I always did. And then I left. Quietly. Now here they were again, back under my roof, still pretending I didn't exist. Avery? Marcus's voice slipped through the door crack. He never knocked. He didn't have to. Come in, I said, keeping my tone even. He walked in briskly, tablet in hand. I flagged something you should see. Booking confirmation just cleared this morning. He turned the screen toward me. I didn't need to read it. The header was enough. They're using our Midtown ballroom? I asked, though I already knew. Marcus nodded, his expression unsure. And the spa block. 8 VIP suites, 3-day access, brunch, keynote room, the full package. Guest list? He tapped. The names unfolded. Richard, Charlotte, Brielle, Nathan, even my cousin Kelsey, who still thought cloud storage was weather-related. But not mine. Nowhere. I stared at it. Not because I was surprised, but because something inside me no longer stung. They truly believe I won't notice, I said softly. Marcus hesitated. Want me to cancel? I let out a breath that was more weapon than release. Number that would be too kind. Before he could respond, my phone lit up. The caller ID made my brow rise. Brielle Collins, of course. I picked up, letting silence stretch a beat too long. Hello? Well. Her voice dripped like lacquer. Imagine my surprise seeing your name pop up again. How's the boutique hotel biz? It's not a boutique anymore, I said evenly. I hear the Monarch Grand is booked solid. Good for you. Though, the Collins family tends to raise expectations. Hope your staff can handle us. I leaned forward, letting steel slide into my voice. We always rise to the occasion. She laughed. The same condescending tilt she used when we were 17 and she'd borrowed my dress, spilled wine on it, and blamed me for being dramatic. Well, she said, the venue's quite exclusive. I hope the family rate doesn't bankrupt you. I smiled into the receiver. Don't worry, we have flexible pricing. She hung up without saying goodbye. I didn't mind. I turned to Marcus. Pull up their contract request file. He swiped, brought it up on the office screen. I opened the internal authorization portal, reviewed the numbers, then picked up my stylus. Mark up their total by 25%, I said, signing. Call it the special family rate. I want the invoice filed today, in Charlotte's name. Marcus blinked. You sure? They'll pay it, I said. They always do, as long as they don't read the fine print. He nodded and left, the door easing shut behind him. I swiveled back to my desk and tapped the corner of the screen. A folder expanded. Phase 1, reclaim the room. Blueprints loaded first, overhead schematics of the grand ballroom. Then, staging notes, lighting design, wireless access zones, backup server controls. Everything. At the bottom was a countdown. 18 days. They thought I was just the venue. They forgot I was the architect, the owner, the one they erased, who still had the keys. She opened a digital file titled Phase 1, Reclaim the Room. Inside, architectural plans, staging notes, and a countdown. 10 years ago, they said I didn't belong at the table, so I built one of my own, 30 floors higher. The city looked almost fictional from here. Sun slicing across glass towers, Central Park curled like a secret below. I leaned against the window frame of my penthouse suite, coffee cooling in my hand, eyes tracking the endless Manhattan skyline. I turned away before it could stir too much. On the coffee table, an old red notebook sat open, spine worn, corners soft. Cornell, Year 1 was scribbled in blue Sharpie on the cover. I hadn't touched it in years. Inside the front flap was a quote in cursive, my grandmother's handwriting. Build quietly. Let them choke on the view. Below it, a pencil sketch, crude but determined, of a modernist hotel tower with a rooftop garden and floor-to-ceiling windows. I traced the lines with my thumb. I'd drawn it the night after the dinner. The memory didn't wait for permission. It bloomed, intrusive. May 2014, Collins Estate. The dining room was twice renovated and never lived in. The air always smelled of lacquer and cold lamb. I was 19, fresh off my first week cleaning guest rooms in a boutique hotel near campus. Excited, proud. I made the mistake of saying so. My father's wine glass landed hard on the marble. No daughter of mine will carry luggage in a hotel, he said, voice clipped, brows low. I looked up, confused. It's a 5-star property, Dad. I'm learning. You're embarrassing us. Brielle giggled. My mother adjusted her napkin. And I? I packed my suitcase that same night. Not in shame, but in clarity. Back in the present, I clicked the lid shut on the notebook and slid it beneath a drawer. That part of me, the girl seeking approval, didn't live here anymore. I opened my laptop. The ballroom's 3D render rotated slowly on the screen, every light, every curtain rod exactly where I wanted them. I made a few notes, flagged the staging team. It had to be flawless. I wasn't leaving fingerprints, just impressions. The phone lit up. Malene. Incoming call, I answered on speaker. Hey. She sounded breathless. You still want everyone arriving at 6:45 sharp? Yes, I said. Tell them it's a press photo op. That should keep the outfits on point. Won't they ask questions? They never do, I said. Copy. I'll prep the valet crew too. Extra signage, no room for wandering. I smiled. Perfect. And Malene? Yeah? Thanks for not pretending this isn't messed up. She paused, then quietly said, Some of us saw it all. We just couldn't say anything then. The line went dead. I looked down at the ballroom render again, tapped the corner. Behind me, the elevator pinged. Marcus stepped in, 2 phones and a tablet in hand, worry etched across his usually unreadable face. You've got the lighting update, he said, then stopped. Avery, are you really ready for this? I met his eyes. I've waited 10 years. I'm not coming back. I'm coming in. He gave a half nod, then crossed to the side table, placing down the new badge lanyards. My laptop chimed. I turned back to it. A small window had popped up, blinking in blue. LED display programming. Complete. Good. They liked pictures. I preferred messages. Avery receives an auto update on her screen. LED display programming complete. They wanted prestige. I gave them spectacle, just not the kind they expected. The chandeliers in the Royal Orchid Ballroom threw light like liquid diamonds across the polished marble. Everything gleamed. The glassware, the floral centerpieces, even the imported silk drapery that swayed ever so slightly in the climate-controlled air. Perfection could be bought. But control? That had to be earned. I stood in the back, arms folded, watching as the LED lights cascaded in synchronized sweeps across the ceiling. Gold to lavender, lavender to deep blue. I nodded once. Marcus scribbled something on his tablet and gestured to the AV crew near the main console. They moved like clockwork now. They'd had weeks of rehearsals and had no idea they were participating in something far more precise than a reunion gala. Cue next, I said softly. The main display flared to life above the entrance arch. A shimmering logo against a charcoal backdrop. The Monarch Grand, a Carter legacy. I tilted my head. Slower fade on the final frame, I said. One of the techs glanced up. You got it, Ms. Carter. I almost smiled. Almost. Marcus appeared beside me, holding a printed spreadsheet. Room assignments finalized, he murmured. But this one flagged something. He pointed. Brielle Collins, Standard Queen, 14th floor. I raised an eyebrow. That's correct. He hesitated. She was listed for a corner suite. And then she wasn't. Marcus glanced down, then made the change official. Noted. The ballroom shimmered behind us, pristine, cold, magnificent. Like the family that thought they still owned moments like this. My phone buzzed. I didn't need to guess who. Brielle Collins. Hope you're not planning anything dramatic? I stared at the screen for 3 seconds before typing back. Avery Carter. Wouldn't dream of it. Let her wonder. I walked the edge of the room, running my fingers along the velvet rope that would guide guests to the red carpet. Even that had been deliberate. Not wine red. Crimson. A little too bold. A little too uncomfortable. A little too... me. I passed by the AV command center again and knelt near the primary console. Show me the montage timing. A technician tapped the timeline, scrubbing forward. At 7:15 p.m., the screen would dim, and a single audio file would play, Who owns this building? Then, 14 seconds of silence, followed by photographs, renderings, construction plans, ribbon cuttings, my face, my name, my signature. If they still had doubts after that, well, the stage lighting would be bright enough to capture their expressions. Marcus rejoined me, whispering low. Florals are done. Press pass pickup ends at 5. Waitstaff briefed. Should I have the band loop the walk-in music until the cue hits? Yes, I said, brushing a thread from my blazer. And I want the lighting to stay 2 levels dimmer until the montage plays. He hesitated again. He did that sometimes, when the stakes moved from high to razor-edged. Then, after a pause, when will you show your face? I adjusted the cufflink on my sleeve and turned toward the ballroom doors. When they start clapping for the wrong person. They strutted in like royalty. Too bad I held the deed to their kingdom. From my perch on the 22nd floor, the world looked small. Even the grand lobby, polished to mirror-like sheen, seemed like a toy stage below the surveillance feed. I sat in the private command room tucked behind a wall of tinted glass, sipping green tea as the monitors lit up one by one. They were arriving. On screen 3, Charlotte swept in first. Navy silk dress, matching clutch. Her smile strained at the corners, just like I remembered. The smile that said, I'm above you, even when she was speaking to a valet. She gestured sharply toward the host stand and frowned at something out of frame. We expect a higher standard at Monarch, she snapped to a staffer. Screen 7 caught Brielle striking a pose near the orchids. She leaned toward two women in crystal-trimmed heels, whispering something. A few seconds later, her voice reached one of the boom mics hidden in the chandelier. Elsie Carter must have owed Dad a favor. She laughed, flicking her wrist like it was nothing. No way we got this venue without connections. The waiting list is like impossible. Screen 1 showed Walter, tall, stoic, with that banker's posture and the exact same haircut he'd had for the last 20 years. He was talking animatedly to two men in blue suits. One of them was from Pricewater and Burke, the firm that once rejected my early hotel proposal on his recommendation. Legacy, gentlemen, that's what we're here to celebrate, Walter said. 3 generations of Collins. And with Brielle stepping into real estate, well, let's just say the future's paved. They all laughed. I watched without blinking. Marcus leaned in from the left, handing me a small device. One button. You sure about the timing? Down to the second. I glanced at the schedule again. 7:13. The champagne flutes had begun circulating. Guests smiled too brightly, eyeing the cameras in the ballroom corners. The music was swelling, not quite loud, but full enough to give people that buzz of self-importance. Screen 5 showed the ballroom. Gold-accented chairs, crisp linens. The Collins crest stamped on the menu cards. Designed by me, approved by them. They never noticed the watermark beneath the print. AC. Go to wide view, I murmured. All screens aligned. Hundreds of faces. 1,000 designer decisions. 0 awareness. The clock hit 7:15. I pressed the button. The chandeliers dimmed. One by one, the LEDs along the walls faded to black. Murmurs rippled, uncertain at first. On cue, the central screen lit up. Sharp white text on a clean obsidian background. The Monarch Grand, owned by Avery Carter. Then silence. No music, no narration, just the words. A glass dropped. Then another. The murmurs stopped. All eyes turned toward the stage where the family had arranged a cluster of chairs, seats reserved for Colin's legacy. The lights above them, once flattering, now turned stark. Cold. Faces blanched. Charlotte's mouth hung slightly open. Walter's brow furrowed as if trying to parse a trick. Brielle slowly sat, blinking, as though she could rewind it all just by blinking hard enough. I stood. Marcus opened the AV curtain for me. My heels tapped softly as I stepped forward, out of shadow into spotlight. Good evening, family. For a decade, I let them believe I was small. Tonight, I showed them how high I'd climb. The air in the ballroom felt denser now, heavy with the kind of silence only truth can create. The chandeliers had resumed their glow, but no one dared to move. No forks clinked, no polite coughs. Just the low hum of stunned disbelief stretching across silk tablecloths and century-old pride. I stood center stage, the LEDs behind me still glowing with my name. I adjusted the lapel of my blazer and faced them all. The family that once sat me with the catering staff, that told me ambition made me uncouth. Thank you all, I said into the mic, my voice calm, measured, for attending tonight's celebration at my hotel. No applause, just stares. The screen behind me flickered, then rolled. Footage of a younger me, in a faded housekeeping uniform, dragging linens down a hallway, face flushed but determined. A second clip. Me signing a loan document, hand shaking slightly. Then, the ribbon cutting in Dubai. The rooftop launch in Tokyo. Paris swarmed by cameras, each city more golden than the last. A beat. Then the final frame. The Monarch Grand's logo with one line beneath it. Owned, designed, and built by Avery Carter. Marcus stepped from the wing, holding a neat stack of folders. He moved down the center aisle, handing them to select guests. Investors, partners, clients of the Collins family who now wore the expression of people realizing they'd backed the wrong horse. Inside the folders, receipts, booking contracts. A detailed breakdown of inflated charges under Collins' legacy rate. I saw Walter squinting, lips slightly parted. Charlotte frozen, still perched upright as if posture could fix this. Brielle, arms crossed, face white with disbelief, stared straight at me like she wanted to scream but had forgotten how. A quiet chuckle rose near the side hallway. Malene. She leaned against the wall, arms folded, head shaking. At least someone in this family built something. Several guests turned toward her. One or two laughed, unsure if they were allowed. Brielle stood, voice sharp. You planned this to humiliate us. I looked at her. Not with anger, not anymore. I planned it, I said, to finally be seen. She faltered, sat down again, lips tight. I walked toward the edge of the stage and stopped in front of Charlotte. You once told me, I said softly, that family is earned, that it's not about blood, but about legacy. Her eyes narrowed, flickering between me and the guests still holding their folders like grenades. I agree, I continued. That's why I built my own. From scratch. With integrity, vision, and a team that never once asked me to be smaller. She opened her mouth. Nothing came out. Walter stood without a word. He didn't look at me. He just left, step by step. Pride bruised into silence. I watched him go. Brielle's hand trembled as she set down her champagne flute. Her cheeks were blotched now, part fury, part shame. Charlotte stood slowly, smoothing her dress, eyes locked on mine. She stepped close enough for only me to hear and whispered, We'd like to talk. I didn't hesitate. Book a table, I said. My restaurant, 9 a.m. I turned toward the guests. The reservation is under Carter. They spent 10 years pretending I didn't exist. Today, I let them sit inside my legacy. Sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting a warm haze over the rooftop lounge suite. The skyline was quiet at this hour, a still life of ambition in glass and steel. I stood barefoot on the marble floor, coffee in hand, as piano chords drifted from the speaker system behind me. Software unintrusive, like a morning that knew it had already won. Marcus knocked once before stepping inside. He held a folder under one arm and a small stack of newspapers in the other. Press clippings, he said. Your front page, everywhere. He handed me the top one. CEO, revealed at Luxury Family Gala, the woman behind the Monarch Empire. A candid photo accompanied the headline. I was mid-step, just exiting the AV curtain, eyes steady. No smile, just presence. I flipped through a few more. Some focused on the shock factor, others framed it as a corporate power move. None mentioned Charlotte. None quoted Walter. Brielle's name appeared once in a sidebar labeled, Event Organizer Unavailable for Comment. I took another sip of coffee. The screen on the wall buzzed to life. Message notification. Charlotte Collins. Can we talk? I typed back without hesitation. Avery Carter. 9 a.m., bistro. Your table's reserved. I didn't wait for a reply. A few minutes later, Malene entered the suite, carrying a second mug and kicking off her heels near the door. Good morning, Empress, she said, collapsing into one of the velvet chairs. I raised an eyebrow. You were there last night. You saw the lack of a crown. She shrugged. No crown needed when the walls wear your name. She glanced at the table, scanning the headlines. They're quiet, she said, nodding toward the news. Too stunned to play victim. That's a new one. I leaned against the windowsill, letting the sun warm my face. I gave them silence, I said. What they did with it was theirs. Malene looked at me for a long moment, then gently, You didn't burn the bridge. I looked down at the city. I didn't have to, I said. They lit it themselves. We sat like that for a while. Two women with nothing left to prove, only air to breathe. At 8:55, I pulled on my blazer and adjusted the cuff. Marcus met me at the elevator, already scrolling through the next day's logistics. I waved him off. Today didn't need managing. The bistro was quiet, sleek. Warm sunlight filtered through amber-tinted glass. My table, Their table was set near the north window overlooking the city. Charlotte arrived first, impeccably dressed, hair pinned, face unreadable. Walter followed a step behind, older somehow in the morning light. Brielle trailed them both, sunglasses on indoors, lips pressed thin. No one spoke. I didn't sit. I simply nodded toward the menu. Order whatever you like. It's on the house. And then I turned. Back through the lobby, toward the private elevator, toward my day. As the doors closed behind me, my phone buzzed again. I didn't check it. I pressed mute and let the music play me out. They walked into a monument they didn't know she built and left, realizing they no longer belonged inside it. For 10 years, they spoke her name like an afterthought, if at all. They planned dinners without her, crafted family narratives that skipped her chapter entirely, and justified her absence as a consequence of her choices. But behind the closed doors, they thought she'd never open again. Avery Carter wasn't mourning. She was building. Not just a company, not just a name, but a reality where their silence no longer held power over her. They believed erasure was permanent, that if they ignored her long enough, she'd disappear. But what they forgot is that absence doesn't mean defeat. Sometimes absence is planning, and sometimes the most deafening return comes without a single raised voice. Only a room, a logo, a reveal that leaves the proudest people in the building unable to speak. One by one, they arrived in luxury gowns and designer suits, smiling for cameras and speaking of legacy. Not knowing they were standing on the very thing they tried to bury. Every name they dropped, every lie they told, every time they chose one another over her, it all echoed in the silence of that ballroom. And when the lights dimmed, when the screen turned black, and when her name lit up brighter than their egos could handle, that was justice. Not in noise, but in knowing. She never yelled. She never begged. She simply built, and when they finally looked up, it was her ceiling they stood under. Justice doesn't always scream in courtrooms. It doesn't always demand headlines or revenge. Sometimes it wears a tailored suit, signs the invoices with your name, and lets the consequences speak for themselves. And sometimes it sits across the table from the people who once laughed at your dreams. While you sip your coffee, check your schedule, and let them wonder if they'll ever be part of it again. They called her dramatic. She gave them proof. They thought she was small. She built tall. They said she didn't belong. Now they needed reservations. Like the final chord of a long-forgotten melody, justice may arrive late, but it echoes long after the music fades. And when truth takes center stage, no legacy built on lies can hold the spotlight for long. Avery didn't wait for an apology. She designed a life that no longer required one. Because power isn't just reclaiming what was stolen, it's waking up every morning in a world they said you couldn't build, and choosing peace over permission. Let that be the lesson. No wall of lies can stand forever against the tide of truth. And perhaps standing up today means you'll never again have to bow to injustice tomorrow. If you've ever been told to stay quiet, to shrink, to settle for less than what you built, I hope this story reminded you. Silence is not surrender, and exile is not the end. Avery didn't wait for permission. She didn't wait for an apology. She built until they had to walk through her doors to remember her name. So if you're rebuilding after being erased, if you're holding on to a truth no one clapped for yet, keep going, because one day, the room that shut you out will echo with your name, not an apology, but in awe. Leave a comment below if you've ever had to reclaim your place. Subscribe for more stories of quiet revenge, loud clarity, and the kind of power that doesn't need to shout. And remember, you don't need a seat at their table when you own the whole building. My name is Savannah Whitaker. 3 years ago, I wired $8 million to save the family business. No contract, no seat at the table, just faith and a familiar kind of silence. They said they needed me. They said, "This isn't charity. It's family. But this week, I tried logging into the shareholder portal. User not recognized. No warning, no email. Just clean erasure, the corporate kind. And when I checked the tax records, I found out what really happened. They changed the name of the company, rewrote the ownership, and buried me under footnotes and forged signatures. They didn't just erase me from the room, they erased me from the story. Before I show you how I gathered every file they thought I'd never find, before I play you the recording that changed everything, comment below if you've ever been written out of something you helped build. Hit like and subscribe if you believe silence is not the price of survival. This isn't revenge. This is a reckoning. The room was still, except for the hush of rain tapping against glass and the low hum of the fridge down the hall. Cold tea sat untouched beside my laptop, the steam long faded. On the screen, the voicemail icon blinked like it had something urgent to say. But I already knew the tone it would carry. I clicked anyway. "Sweetheart, we need your help again. It's your mother." Same cadence, same varnish of civility. I let it play out, listening as though it were an old recording from someone long dead. She never said my name anymore unless she wanted something. And when she did, it sounded like a foreign currency. Polished, controlled, valueless.